Let me get this straight. The Browns are about to make a generational mistake at quarterback this offseason. The Browns have been trashed for a long time, everyone knows it, but I think this year's draft class is going to change that. In this year's draft, the Browns picked up Casey Concepcion, Denzel Boston, and helped out on the trenches. Clearly, the no defense is their strong suit with guys like Myles Garrett and Carson Schlesinger, so they wanted to beef up the offense, which is understandable. All you need now is a quarterback. The thing is, they have that too. In last year's draft, they got Shedeur after he slid all the way down to the 5th round. Yo, the Browns should be set. Right? No, new Browns head coach Todd Monken, who just got with the team, hasn't picked a starter yet between Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson. Yeah, NFL fans, I know I haven't heard that name in a long time. Deshaun Watson's basically been a ghost the past 4 years. Apparently through the first few days of OTAs, people were saying, oh, Deshaun Watson.
There is a quarterback room in Cleveland right now that feels less like a position battle and more like a countdown. 4 men, 1 job, and a fan base that has waited so long for an answer that the waiting itself has become its own kind of torture. This is the story of Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders, and the season that could be decided before a single snap of real football is even played. Let's go back for a second, because you need to understand what got us here. 3 first-round picks. That's what Cleveland gave up to bring in Deshaun Watson. 3 first-round picks, plus more, for a quarterback who was supposed to be the answer, the guy who would finally end the chaos at the most important position in sports. Instead, Watson has barely played. Injuries have swallowed years of his career in Cleveland whole. And every time it looked like he might finally take the field and prove the trade was worth it, something else went wrong. Now here he is again, healthy enough to compete, with everything to prove and almost nothing left in the bank of patience Browns fans have for him. And then there's Shedeur Sanders, a name everybody knows, a story nobody expected to unfold quite like this. He was supposed to be a first-round pick, maybe a top 10 pick. Instead, team after team passed. Round after round went by. And Cleveland, of all franchises, was the one that finally called his name in the 5th round. Think about that for a second. A player with that pedigree, that talent, that spotlight on him since before he ever set foot on an NFL field, falling all the way to the 5th round. It was stunning. It was, to a lot of people, an embarrassment. But for Shedeur, it became fuel. And now, less than a year later, he's not just on the roster. He's in the conversation. He's the guy the fans are chanting for. He's the underdog story this franchise didn't know it needed. And that is exactly where the tension begins to boil. Because here's the thing about Cleveland. This isn't a fan base that forgives easily, and it isn't a fan base that forgets. They have sat through more failed quarterbacks than almost any city in football. They have watched hope rise and collapse over and over again. So when a rookie 5th-round pick starts to look like the answer, and the guy they spent 3 first-round picks on still hasn't delivered, you don't just have a quarterback competition. You have a referendum on the entire direction of the franchise. Picture training camp. Pads are on. Every single rep is being filmed, dissected, argued about online before the players have even showered. Sanders taking snaps with the fan favorites cheering every completion. Watson out there trying to look like the guy who was supposed to save this franchise, knowing that every incompletion is going to be a headline by dinner time. The coaching staff keeps saying the job is open. Nothing is decided. They insist. But you can feel it, can't you? You can feel which way the wind in that stadium is blowing. And it's not just 2 men in that quarterback room. There's Dillon Gabriel, a 3rd-round pick from the year before, quietly waiting for his shot, watching the 2 bigger names take the spotlight while he keeps developing behind the scenes. There's Taylen Green, the rookie the Browns just added in this year's draft, a name almost nobody outside of Cleveland knows yet, but a name that could matter more than anyone expects if this whole thing goes sideways. 4 quarterbacks, 1 depth chart, and a roster that cannot carry all of them once final cuts arrive. Somebody's football future in Cleveland ends this summer. Maybe more than one somebody. Now here's where the real suspense comes in, because this decision is not just about who wins in practice. It's about what happens after. Imagine, for a second, that Deshaun Watson wins this competition. Imagine the coaching staff stands up in front of the cameras and says the job belongs to Watson. What happens in that stadium? What happens on social media within minutes? You already know. It would not be met with relief. It would be met with outrage. Because this is a fan base that has already decided, whether it's fair or not, that Watson's story in Cleveland has not matched the price they paid for it. And there is a very real chance that naming him the starter, even if it is the right football decision, becomes the most unpopular move this franchise makes all year. Now flip it. Imagine Shedeur Sanders wins the job. Imagine that fifth-round pick, the player nobody wanted to gamble a first-round selection on, walks out of training camp as QB1. The energy in that building changes overnight. Jersey sales change. Ticket demand changes. The entire emotional temperature of a city that has been starving for a reason to believe changes. But so does the pressure. Because now the kid who fell to the fifth round has to prove, in real time, in real games, that every team who passed on him made a mistake. And rookie seasons in this league are brutal. He didn't have a great offense around him in year one. If year two brings the same struggles, that same fan base that lifted him up could turn just as fast. That is the trap sitting underneath this entire storyline. There is no safe outcome here. Every path forward carries risk, carries backlash, carries a season's worth of consequences riding on a decision that hasn't even been made yet. And Cleveland, more than almost any other city in football, knows exactly how quickly hope can turn into heartbreak at this position. So when training camp opens, when the pads finally come on and the real evaluation begins, understand what you're actually watching. It's not just quarterbacks competing for representatives. It's a franchise deciding what kind of team it wants to be. It's a fan base holding its breath, half hoping for fairy tale, half bracing for more of the same disappointment they've lived through for years. And somewhere in that quarterback room, one of these players is about to become the most talked about man in Cleveland sports, for better or for worse. The Browns have to get this right, not just for this season, but for the years after it, because even the winner of this competition is not guaranteed to be the long-term answer. This franchise is still going to be searching for its future at this position beyond this year, no matter who wins the job this summer. But right now, in this moment, before a single regular season snap has been taken, the tension could not be higher. Two men, one job, a city that has waited far too long for stability at the position that decides everything, and a decision coming that will either restore faith in Cleveland or reopen a wound that never fully healed. Whatever happens next, one thing is certain. Cleveland is not just watching a quarterback competition. It's watching its own hope hang in the balance. Think about the ripple effects nobody talks about on the surface. The receivers need to know who they are building chemistry with. The offensive line needs to know whose blind side they are protecting all season. Every single day this competition drags on without an answer, it's not just quarterbacks feeling the pressure. It's an entire organization holding its breath, waiting to build its identity around whichever name gets called. And there's a business side too. A city excited about its quarterback fills seats and sells jerseys. A city disillusioned by its quarterback situation, one more time, after everything this fan base has endured, that's a different kind of damage, the kind that lingers past a single season. So when the pads finally come on, when the first real hits land in training camp, remember that every rep is being weighed against years of frustration, years of almost. This isn't just a competition for a starting job. It's a test of whether Cleveland can finally get this position right.